Nom Nom delivers fresh food with whole ingredients backed by veterinarian science. Science tells us that a dog's health starts in the bowl, so improving their diet is one of the best ways to help them live a long and happy life. Nom Nom's food is full of proteins your dog loves and the vitamins and nutrients they need to thrive. All you have to do is order, pour, and serve. Ready to make the switch to fresh? Order Nom Nom today. Go to https://trynom.com/curveball and get 50% off your first order plus free shipping. That's https://trynom.com/curveball. Plus, Nom Nom comes with a money-back guarantee. If your dog's tail isn't wagging within 30 days, Nom Nom will refund your first order. No fillers, no nonsense, just Nom Nom. Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by David Essel. He is a #1 best-selling author, counselor, coach, international speaker, radio and TV podcast host, and his mission is to positively affect 2 million people per day. So we're going to be talking to him about his story. David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Curtis, I've been looking forward to this and interested in what we're going to go through with the Curveball podcast, my brother.
Well, we can start, first of all, by you telling everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I started in this business 43 years ago. Started in the world of sports psychology, working with athletes, mainly with their mind. Of course, sports psychology doesn't have much to do with training, physical training, but all about the mind. And that was 1980 when I began, Curtis. And then 1990, I switched over after a near tragic event that I had. I ended up switching over and not only working with athletes, but working with people that were struggling with addictions, relationships, finances, self-confidence, self-esteem. You know, and it really did change. And from 1990 to today, it's everything. I tell people the only topics we don't cover are politics. Besides that, oh my gosh, it's wide open. We have 14 books. Our 14th book, Mental Mastery and Maximum Performance for Professional Athletes, comes out in about 2 weeks, Curtis. So super excited about that.
Congratulations on that. So tell us how you got started into everything that you're doing, because you're up to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's all of us have gifts, Curtis. You know, you have gifts, I have gifts, everyone has gifts. And I learned at a very young age that one of the gifts I was given was that of leadership. And I had a natural desire to be in front of people, leading, teaching, whatever the words you want to use. And it wasn't that I was born with all the information, education, and knowledge that I needed, but I did realize that, especially in the world of sports, where I got my start, that every sport I played in, I wanted to be the one that was directing the team. You know, so in baseball as a pitcher, I played Division I basketball at Syracuse, and I was both a point guard and a shooting guard. So it was always a position of leadership. So when I got out of college and got my degree with sports psychology, it just made total sense for me to start working with athletes one-on-one or doing lectures to complete teams over the years, lifting them up, bringing them the most recent information on how they can up their game and decrease stress. You know, the American College of Sports Medicine, Curtis, came out recently with a study. I think it's underreported, but I'll share it with what they came up with, that 35% of elite athletes are struggling so deeply right now with addictions, depression, anxiety, eating disorders. One of the things they found surprising in their interviews with elite athletes is the huge increase in ADD and ADHD, which we are seeing across the board all over the world. And it's not just new diagnostic techniques that are showing up so much of the new ADD and ADHD. A lot of it is due to society. I go back, if people can remember the first days of MTV TV, that's when we started to be indoctrinated in short form television, which means our attention span started to get very, very short. And so MTV comes along, exciting 3-minute videos, and we realized that in the world of sports, that the ADD and ADHD. Now, remember, a lot of the athletes we're talking about are 18 to 35 on average. So they grew up in this instant information age, and they can get bored super quick, and ADD can come in, ADHD can come in. So, we're seeing in the world of sports the same type of issues, Curtis, that we're seeing in the regular population. But athletes are finally coming forward and saying we have challenges. Now, in our private practice, we see about 60% of elite athletes challenged right now: depression, anxiety, addiction, et cetera. And even though the study came out, said 35%, that's pretty normal, because most athletes don't want to report and have their team, owners, management know that they're struggling with addiction, depression. It puts a black mark on their resume. So they will underreport. So when we see studies coming from the world of elite athletes, at least as a sports psychology coach, I always know it's going to be way underreported. So we have about 60% of elite athletes really struggling. Now, if we go to another study that came out recently that has only to do with the general population from the American Psychological Association, they found something extremely fascinating. 80% of Americans reported that they are struggling deeply with their mental health and emotional decision-making. So this is just around the world, everything that's happened, from the racial division to the political insanity to COVID to inflation and everything else that's gone on. Our world, Curtis, is in a very difficult place. It's one of the reasons I absolutely love what I do. And, during the show, I'll say more, but we actually are giving away 3 of our top selling books for free at our website. And the reason we're doing that is that we see the pressure, the stress, and the pain this world is under. So we're going to be actually giving away a lot of our books for free so people can have resources to start to improve their lives, because there's a lot of people that need help right now.
Absolutely. So tell us about your ministry, talk about what you do, and also talk about your mission of impacting 2 million people per day. How did you come up with that, and how you doing on it?
Yeah, those are great questions, Curtis. Years ago, we used to have goals of, based on finances, which most companies do. We have a financial goal of hitting so much money per year and having so much of it as being profit and the rest of it expenses, et cetera. So I've been doing this for 43 years. I would say easily the first 25 to 30 years, we would have financial goals to reach every year. I had a business coach that I would work with. And then I started getting bored with this, quite frankly, not because I was making billions of dollars and didn't know what to do with my money, but I just got bored with how'd you do this week with your income? Did you meet your goal? Did you exceed it? Were you short? If you were short, what are you going to do next week to increase your income? I got tired of it, Curtis. So we switched. And one day I woke up and said, why don't we set goals to reach more people? Because that's really the reason I'm on earth. The reason I'm on earth is to give information to help people who are hurting. So we said, well, what better way than to start setting goals with numbers of people? As an example, with you right now, you've spoken to my publicist, TJ Torriello. TJ has me on radio and TV shows every day of the week. This is how we're reaching 2 million people a day. After you, tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning, I'm on a massive TV show talking about PTSD, which has become one of the hottest mental health issues in our country. Before, the pandemic, people used to think of PTSD, Curtis, as only related to the military. And yes, the military struggles deeply with PTSD. But what we've found in one of the books that we give away at the website for free, it's called Helping Americans Heal. We have a story in there about what PTSD really is. And we have a client that I worked with that came down with PTSD. And when she hired me, she said, David, I think I'm battling with depression. But when we worked together, we found it was much more than depression. PTSD can cover everything from depression, and include PSD can include eating disorders, addictions, anxiety, sleep disorders, isolation, anger, irritability, impatience. I mean, PTSD is very serious. It's very difficult to, yes, we can overcome it, but it's very difficult. So to answer your question, how are we doing with the 2 million? We're doing great. And we believe one of the reasons, maybe unfortunately, is because so many people need help right now. So a lot of TV stations that maybe normally wouldn't interview David Essel on PTSD are saying, oh my gosh, how quickly can we get you in? Because this is getting bigger than we thought. To answer your question on the ministry, my ministry is woven into everything. And we work with people from all faiths. We're not just a one faith, one stop place. If, someone is Buddhist, we work with Buddhists. If someone is Christian, we work with Christians. Someone is Jewish, we don't hold any kind of hierarchy here. Whatever your spiritual or religious path is, we minister to everyone. There's no one that we shut out whatsoever. And really the goal with all of our work, if it can come down to maybe a simple term or two, would be emotional regulation. And what that means is, especially during these incredible stressful times, when someone is emotionally regulated and they get hit by a stressor, finances, addiction, relationship challenges, they understand that first reaction is going to be, oh my Lord, not again. That's just a normal reaction. But then someone who's emotionally regulated would say, okay, what can I do to help myself right now? What am I doing that might be putting more strain on my relationship? What am I doing that's creating some of my financial hardship outside of the inflation? What am I doing that's creating this extra weight gain? What am I doing? What am I doing? So when we're emotionally regulated, we look within first. What am I doing that might be creating this negativity or this chaos and drama? And then the second question is, what can I do from my side to help minimize the stress between myself and my partner, my children, my boss, whatever it might be? So, we kind of look at ministry a little different. Is there a religious and spiritual component? Absolutely. But it's dependent, Curtis, on how deep that person wants to go on that pathway. If you look at the world of personal growth, I think the whole world of personal growth is all a ministry. It's all about sharing good words, sharing good deeds, and helping people get through tough stuff in life, which is what ministry is all about.
So tell us about that podcast and other shows that you might host. Tell the listeners what they can expect when they listen to them and where we can find them at.
Yeah, the podcast that we do is on buzzsprout.com. So if you just Google buzzsprout.com, David Essel, you'll find my channel right away. And we cover everything, Curtis. I mean, there isn't a topic. I'm trying to think. I did 3 today. I'm trying to think off the top of my head what they were. One was talking about the American College of Sports Medicine and elite athletes. We shared that study. And then we did 2 other ones. And I'm scratching my brain. It was about an hour ago thinking what they are. But we have topics up there talking about athletes. We have topics up there talking about forgiveness. We have topics up there. I know one I did today was on anxiety. And, what we the name of it is called conscious anxiety. Now, that might sound like a strange topic for a podcast, but what we say is this. When people are hit by a panic attack or a high level of anxiety, what we ask people to do, and this is very difficult at first, but to be conscious with your anxiety means you sit in it and you ask yourself the question, what is causing this? What's causing my heart rate to race? What's causing my blood pressure to go up? What's causing that pit in my stomach? Now, it might be something that you have to do in 3 days from now. And so you go, wow, I'm worried about this thing in 3 days. So what can I do today to alleviate the stress for the event that's coming up in 3 days? See, that's conscious anxiety. That means I'm going to sit, I'm going to feel, I'm going to try to figure out where it's coming from, and then I'm going to look for a solution. Now, sometimes, Curtis, people can't find where it's coming from or what the solution is. So we immediately have 2 options for them. One is there's this really wonderful anti-anxiety supplement called Calm, CALM. It's a specific form of magnesium. People take a teaspoon or 2 of it mixed in water, and within 15 to 20 minutes, there's a radical change in your feeling of being anxious. And then the other thing we have them do outside of taking supplements is we have them do this very powerful, slow breathing exercise. And it's called diaphragmatic breathing. So if you hit a panic attack, or you get really anxious when you have to go to school, or you get really anxious when you have to go to a meeting, we have people sit and put their hand on their stomach, Curtis. And when they inhale, the hand on the stomach should move out on the inhale. And as you exhale, it should move back in. Now, the secret of this slow breathing technique is that it affects what's called the vagus nerve, VAGUS. The vagus nerve runs from the top of your head to the bottom of your toes. And what it does is it directly affects anxiety. So when the vagus nerve is stimulated, I've got a meeting in 3 days. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? It starts to vibrate, which creates the anxiety. So if we can calm the vagus nerve, which we can with the exercise I just gave you, or the supplement I just mentioned, now we can get down to saying, okay, I feel the anxiety coming on about what's coming up in 3 days. My head is now clear because of the breathing or the supplement. What's my next best move? Or sometimes people have anxiety from the past. They've never forgiven themselves for something they feel anxious about. They've never forgiven someone else, maybe who's betrayed them or hurt them, and it creates anxiety. So then another tool that really helps with anxiety is forgiveness exercises that we take people through. So on the podcast, buzzsprout.com, it's going to cover everything from relationships to addictions to sports to anxiety, depression, mental illness. And we feel, Curtis, in where we are today in this world, more of this is needed now than ever before. So for every individual like you that's putting out good information to help people heal, my hat is off to you, Curtis, and all the other hosts out there that are trying to help this world, because we know there's a world of people that are not trying to help, creating more chaos and drama. So we need more Curtises and more Davids and more other people like us that are really trying to make a difference.
Yeah, we're definitely trying to make it better, one show at a time. You were also a professor, so kind of tell us about what kind of classes you taught and how you benefited your students.
Yeah. Oh, teaching is a passion of mine. I mean, right now I'm teaching. Everywhere I go, I teach, Curtis, and I just love it. I taught several years at two different colleges. One is called Florida Southwestern College, and the other one is Florida Gulf Coast University. I taught at both of those colleges, or college and university, for a number of years. I taught two courses, basically a public speaking course, and it's pretty fascinating. I love public speaking. But a recent Gallup survey that's done about every 10 to 15 years, 85% of the US population fears public speaking more than death. I mean, think about that. It blows my mind. So I love teaching public speaking courses because so many people, even if they have to get up and speak in front of 2 or 3 people, can get extremely anxious, extremely nervous. So that was one of the courses I taught. And actually, it's kind of interesting. My father passed away a couple years ago, but he was an accountant at Syracuse University for, 30 years or something like that. And he had to do a public presentation to his boss and 2 other people, a combined 3 people, twice every year. And he used to actually vomit before the meeting. He'd get so worked up, Curtis, so anxious that he would throw up. And then he'd get out of the restroom, clean himself up, and, go back and do the meeting. Now, the meeting was only 10 or 15 minutes long, but, he had a really bad reaction to having to speak in public. The first time he saw me speak, he pulled me aside and said, "Whose kid are you? Whose child are you? Who the heck taught you how to speak in front of all these people?" And we were both laughing so hard. And I said, "Dad, it's not that hard." Well, fast forward, when my dad turned 72, believe it or not, he became an altar boy at 72. He had always wanted to be, we grew up in the Catholic Church. He always wanted to be an altar boy. But as a child, he had to work, from 8 years of age until he graduated from high school because the family didn't have any money. So he couldn't be an altar boy. So at 72, Curtis, he becomes an altar boy. But here's the most beautiful thing that happened for my dad. The very first time that he was being taught by a 10-year-old. Now, my dad was 72 and he was being taught by a 10-year-old how to be an altar boy. The priest called him up to the podium and said, "Mr. Essel, I'm sorry, I have to go back behind the altar to get something I forgot. Could you read this out of the Bible?" for the congregation. And my dad freaked out. He said he was nervous. He walked up, his hands were shaking as he read from the book. The next couple of times my father was asked to do it, he became so comfortable that the priest had to come up and say, Mr. Essel, that's all you had to read. You didn't have to keep going. So I love the fact that my father was like most Americans. I mean, he feared public speaking more than anything. But once he got into it, he just loved it. And for anyone out there with us right now that has a great fear, just let me tell you this. If you even have a 10% desire to overcome that fear of public speaking so that you can go to networking events without being fearful or speak to 2 or 3 people you've never met, it's worth the work. Being comfortable and confident in our own skin and being able to speak to the homeless or to different nationalities or races or to people that make 10 times more money than you or whatever type of group that makes you nervous. Oh, my Lord, when you learn how to communicate with everyone, it makes life, Curtis, so much more enjoyable and so much less stressful.
Well, tell us about some of your #1 best-selling books. You got a few.
Oh, my gosh. Well, we have 14 books out right now. I think it's 4 of them are #1 bestsellers. And, here's something really surprising. And this is an important message for everyone with us. I wrote books for 20 years with no recognition at all. Okay, I wrote books for 20 years, Curtis. I got a couple compliments, maybe a couple YouTube compliments or something like that when we would talk about it, but really there was no action, very little sales for 20 years. Then on the 21st year of writing, I wrote a book. And when I got done with the book, my staff told me that it's either going to skyrocket my career or I'm going to be selling hot dogs on the corner because the name of the book. And remember, I'm a personal growth expert, sports psychology, Mr. Motivation, Mr. Positive, all that kind of stuff. But the number of my first book that went #1 bestseller is called Positive Thinking Will Never Change Your Life, but this book will. The Reality of Success. And in that book, and I have to take my hat off to Jenny McCarthy, the actress, the radio host, former radio host, TV host. She's the TV host and the creator of The Masked Singer on TV. People may know her. She's also a former model and just a phenomenal human being. But she had a show on Sirius XM radio. Now we're going back 6 or 7 years ago when the book first came out. And TJ Torriello, my publicist, contacted her and said, hey, you're going to love this guy, David Essel. He's got a brand new book out. Positive Thinking Will Never Change Your Life. Again, she goes, oh, wait a minute, TJ. No. I can't have that guy. I don't think he's the right match on my show. I love the law of attraction. I love The Secret. I love all these things. What does he think about those programs? And TJ goes, well, why don't you have him on the show? Because Jenny, I think he might surprise you. So Jenny McCarthy let her guard down and said, okay, I'll have him on. I go into her New York studios. Curtis, she was the most welcoming, the most humble, the kindest, the sweetest, and the funniest freaking person at her level of celebrity I've ever met in my life. She was a phenomenal host. I mean, phenomenal. But this is how my first interview went with her. She goes, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have someone in the studio that believes that all of this stuff about The Secret and the law of attraction is not actually accurate. As a matter of fact, he says most of it is false information. Now, you know that as the host of this show, I have loved The Secret. I have loved the law of attraction. So I'm going to give David Essel, with his new book, Positive Thinking Will Never Change Your Life, but this book will, 3 minutes to sell me. When David is done with his 3 minutes, I'll let you know what I think about his philosophy and his new book. David, go for it. And I did, Curtis, and I knocked it out of the park. And I'm not bragging. I'm just telling the truth. And at the end of it, she put the timeout sign and she shook her head at me, moved closer to the mic and said, ladies and gentlemen, David Essel of the positive thinking movement. He has by far convinced me that everything I've been sharing with you for years is not valid. And then she went on, Curtis, to say, and she gave a story. And she said, let me tell you something that came to mind as David was thinking. He's talking about 80% of success comes from what we do and 20% comes from what we think. And that's what I honestly believe, Curtis. Outside of a miracle, If you think I'm going to, win the lottery tomorrow and you win the lottery, to me, that's a miracle. That has nothing to do with your thought process. That's just a miracle. But she said this, she said, after my modeling days, I was very successful and I got lazy. And I would get a gig and they'd say, can you come to Los Angeles? And it's going to be a 2-day event. We're going to pay you this amount. And she'd go, I really don't feel like flying to Los Angeles the weekend. And I'd say no. And then a couple weeks later, I'd get an opportunity to go somewhere else, go to New York and make amount of money doing this. And she'd say, I feel like just staying home in Chicago today. I don't feel like flying to New York. And she said, David, all of a sudden I realized that there was less and less and less coming in. And here I was thinking, I'm staying in this world of positive thinking. I really don't have to do anything. I just have to think positively. And I realized people were losing interest in me. But David, here's the thing that I resonate with your book. Once I started saying yes, 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 yes to all these events, everything exploded. My career came back. She goes, look, I have millions of listeners on this radio show that you're with me on right now. I never had that a couple years ago. And then it goes on, and she kept talking about all these amazing things that happened when she started doing the work combined with thinking positively. So Jenny McCarthy, Curtis, is really the person that gave me and my literary career a huge boost. So we have that one. And then we have a book called Focus, Slay Your Goals. Now, this is a really important book. It was selected by bookauthority.org, which is one of the most prestigious book reviewing organizations out there. And they took our book, Focus, Slay Your Goals. And on this chart, they selected it as one of the top 100 goal setting books ever written in the history of time. And Curtis, they put us right next to the famous Dale Carnegie, who many people believe is one of the founding fathers of the positive thinking movement. So we couldn't be more ecstatic about how Jenny has helped us, how bookauthority.org has helped us. And then the other books that have gone number one, Helping Americans Heal. That was a book we put out maybe a year and a half ago. It's a compendium of 90 different writings on mental health, physical health, relationships, helping people move through the pandemic and inflation and everything else that we're going through. And that became a number one bestseller. So, but I say this, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, for everyone with us that has a major goal. I've always had a major goal of being a number one best-selling writer once I started writing 25 years ago. It may take much longer than you think. Colonel Sanders didn't make his first $1 million until he was 68 years of age. So be patient. If you have passion, if you're willing to work, and if it takes 20 years to win that Nobel Prize, or it takes 25 years to get that number one best-selling book, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be worth it.
Most definitely, listeners, definitely keep that in mind. Tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to know about.
Yeah, well, the biggest one is the new book on for athletes. That's the one, mental mastery and maximum performance for mental athlete or for professional athletes. But we have another book, and this is one of the books that's free at our website, David Essel's Permanent Alcohol and Life Recovery Program. Now, that one came out about 4 months ago, Curtis. The one on athletics is coming out in probably about 3 or 4 weeks. But the most recent one that came out just a couple months ago is our Permanent Alcohol and Life Recovery. And this book is different than any other book people read on recovery. We have treatment center owners. Now, to give you an idea, the average success rate of a treatment center is only about 10 to 15%. What does that mean? That means when someone goes in for 30 days to a treatment center and they don't have a plan of action to follow up that 30 days, the odds are only 10% of people that go through to the 30-day program will be sober a year later. So we know the statistics. I was an alcoholic for a very long period of time. I've been sober for a very long period of time. I went to a 30-day program, a treatment center. I came out of it knowing it was nowhere near enough. And so I hired a counselor like myself to work with for 52 straight weeks. So that program, David Essel's Permanent Alcohol and Life Recovery, is probably the hottest thing going right now because the athlete's book isn't out yet. And we're turning so many lives around, Curtis. When you have treatment center owners admitting, that all of what they do is creating about a 10% success rate. And they read our book and they immediately started sending in one endorsement after another. We knew we were onto something big and really heavy. So for people that are struggling with any kind of addiction, even though the cover says alcohol, all addictions we deal with the same way. Go to the website and get that of the 3 books for free. It'll really make a big difference in your life.
Speaking of that website, go ahead and give it out. Go ahead and throw out your contact information so people can keep up with everything that you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. TalkDavid.com, Curtis, is the name, the website. And ladies and gentlemen, it's the easiest website in the world to remember. Talk David. We name my website that because it's all I do, Curtis, all day long. I constantly talk. So it's an appropriate name. When you go to TalkDavid.com, you can get 3 books for free. Absolutely. Take them all, run with them, enjoy them, read them. And if you want to do a free 20-minute phone session with me to see where I can help you get a jump start on your next goal, just go to the website and you'll see free 20-minute discovery call with David. Sign up. My team will set you up and you and I will jump on the phone. Grab the 3 books, work with me for 20 minutes at no charge. Let's get your life moving in a great direction.
Most definitely. Close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something I forgot to touch on that you would like to talk about, or just any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Well, number one, we become what we watch, what we listen to, what we read, and who we hang out with. And I'm going to repeat this. Listen very closely. I'd even say write this down. We become what we watch, what we read, what we listen to, and who we hang out with. Right now, you're making a choice to listen to Curtis and his podcast. That is one of the best choices you could make because of his intention to lift this world. I'm going to ask you to move away from the news, even though I'm on the news all the time. If I'm on the news, watch my segment. But don't get hung up on watching the news every day it comes on. They repeat things in order to get you hooked. They know how to get dopamine flared up in the brain. I don't want you coming back to watch the insanity that's going on in the world. There's no need for it. So really pay attention to what you watch, what you listen to, what you read, and who you hang out with. Because if you were to write down what you normally watch, read, listen to, and hang out with, you might be shocked that you've been sucked into a vortex that isn't healthy for your mind, body, or finances even. So pay attention to those 4 areas of life and you will begin to rock.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for making the choice to listen to the show. TalkDavid.com. Please be sure to follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Go get those books. Check out everything that David's up to. Get the new book when it comes out. If you have any guests or suggestion topics, cjackson102@cox.net is the place to send them. Thank you for listening. And David, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your expertise.
Curtis, I had a great time. Thank you, sir.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.